Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and today we are talking about anticipatory grief. We're going to talk about what it is, what it means, and what you can do about it. Welcome back. I realized that I hadn't done a video about anticipatory grief because typically the people that I talk to are people who have already lost someone that they love and are looking to get through that grief. But I think it's also important, and I've been reminded by some of my viewers that I have not done a video on anticipatory grief. And as my channel continues to expand, more and more people are coming to me realizing that a death of a loved one is imminent and they want to prepare and they don't know what to do. Let's start by talking about what anticipatory grief is. What anticipatory grief is the worry and the concern of things that are going to happen because you know that a death is about to happen. What you will find with anticipatory grief is that all of the emotions show up, all of the feelings, all of the concerns, the intense level of sadness. There is a lot of similarity between grieving the loss of someone who has gone and that anticipatory grief when you know that they are going to go. And what I want to talk to you about today is 4 different phases, 4 different components of anticipatory grief. I want to tell you what they are, and I want to walk you through each one of them. So the first one is facing the reality. Anticipatory grief starts the moment you find out that a loved one is going to die. And I think that we tend to, if we have someone who is hospitalized or has had a long-term illness, we hold on as long as we can. We don't want to sort of face the idea that there is a pending death. We believe, right? We hold hope out that they will get better, that they will heal, that somehow they will beat death. And anticipatory grief starts the moment that you realize that that is not going to happen, that ultimately they are going to pass on, and that is something that you are going to have to face. So the first thing is facing that reality. Not an easy thing to do, is it? The second phase is looking back. We have a tendency to look back when we know that someone we love is going to die. We look back on all the things that we've shared, on maybe the arguments that we've had, maybe the misunderstandings or disagreement, and we can feel guilty, we can feel worried, we can wonder whether or not we are good people because of the things that we did do, the things that maybe we should have done. We question all of those things. So there's this phase of looking back over everything and starting to see where we're at with that and say, are there things that I feel guilty about? Are there things that are going to haunt me throughout this process and maybe beyond their death? So it's looking at all of those things. Then thirdly is the phase of preparation. When you start to face the reality and you've looked back and you've gone through and you've ruminated all over these things, you start to say, okay, well, we need to prepare for this. What do I need to do? And this can be things like talking to hospice or talking to a funeral home or deciding whether or not they're going to be buried or whether or not they're going to be cremated, or what are you going to do with the ashes? All of these things are this preparatory phase, and you may or you may not have the ability to communicate with the person who is going to be passing. So that is a phase of anticipatory grief. Fourthly, I think there is a phase that I want to consider to be a phase of action. So when you've faced the reality that they are going to die and that death is ultimately going to come, what are the things that you need? What is going to help bring you peace with the reality that this is going to happen? If there are things like we talked about looking backward, are there things that you can do now with the time that you have left? You know, I often talk to victims of sudden death, where suddenly a loved one has a heart attack, dies by suicide, whether they are in a car accident and the loss and the death is sudden. There is no time to prepare. There is no time to do or say anything. With anticipatory grief, there is a period of opportunity where if there are things that you feel guilty about, past arguments or misunderstandings, or things that you need to come to terms with, you can do that with the person who is going to be passing on. And I want to encourage you to do as much as that as possible, because anything that you can do during this anticipatory grief phase ultimately is going to help you when you start what they call conventional grief, or the grief process that you have when your loved one has gone. And it's a unique opportunity to be able to say what needs to be said, do the things that need to be done. If you can ask your loved one some of their wishes, that is a gift. You know, when my dad was passing, we fought in the hospital. He did everything he could to continue to live. And when he decided, because he had the option to stop dialysis that he was on and go into hospice, that was where my anticipatory grief was. When I knew that the end was coming, because he had made that decision, and that there was only a period of time, and we didn't know, could it be a couple of weeks? Could it be a week? Could it be a couple of days? We just didn't know. But there was this sense of urgency to do all the things that needed to be done. And did I need to clear anything up with him? And it allowed me to prepare myself. And for me personally, I wanted to be there. I made a promise to him and to myself that I would be there with him through the end. And that was something that I was able to decide ahead of time in terms of taking action when I knew that he was going to pass. Now, he also shared with me some things. His biggest concern up until the day he died was that people would forget him, that his life would not have had meaning or purpose. And the crazy thing is he even had 7 of us children who he had poured into his entire life. He was still worried that people would forget him. And so he had asked, he made requests, and I asked him, what do you want? And I love that he had the strength and the wherewithal to make requests. And he said, I want to make sure that my carvings are taken care of. So when he retired, he started doing lots of wood carvings. And he was very concerned that people, we were just going to throw them away. So we promised him that that absolutely would not happen, and that we would share his carvings with as many people as we could. And then he had also asked, he had done a lot for his church in terms of building things and making things. And he had asked my oldest brother, can you make a plaque that has my name on it, that says that I made these things? So he had made this beautiful nativity scene to be put out front of the church where they had gone. And it was big, right? It was very big. I have pictures of myself and Mason standing next to it. And he wanted there to be a small brass plaque put on it so that when people saw that, they would know that it was made by him. And it was such a seemingly small request, but made such a big difference. And so we, of course, honored that request. And we were so happy to do that. And I was able to promise my dad that I would continue sharing with him, or sharing him with others, like I'm doing with you now today. And I get to do that, right? And that helps me. That helped me in my anticipatory grief phase, and now in the phase that I'm in now that he has passed. So first you have to face the reality that it is coming, and that's no easy task. Then you look back at the past and you see if there's anything that needs to be cleared up. What are the things that you feel guilty about? What are the things that you are fearful of that might be coming? Look at those, and we can start to address those. Next thing is preparing. Can you call the funeral home ahead of time? Can you decide, what do you want the funeral to be like? You could have a conversation with the person if you can. And when it comes to anticipatory grief, there's a lesson in that too. Because with the other people in our lives, we should know these things. We should know what their wishes are. We should know what they want and what's going to be most important to them, because that is a way to honor them. And I think that's the big thing about anticipatory grief, is how can you honor them as they are still alive and then after their death? And I think that there are things that we can do to really help us with that process. And the process is always going to be hard. There's no getting around it. It's going to be a difficult process, right? Some of these things are some of the biggest things that we deal with in our lives. But if we approach it from our heart and with love, and do the best that we can, because life is never perfect and none of us are perfect. And if we just approach it with love and do the best we can, I think that's all that we can ask for. And I think that we can feel good about what we did. You want to be able to walk away from the situation. You know, I have a memory that's very deeply ingrained in my head of the hospice bed that my dad was on, that after they took him away, they laid a rose, just a single rose. And I have that memory in my head. And I feel like I did right by him. And I think that what anticipatory grief is this sadness, but also the heartwarming feeling that you did what you could do for them, and that you made their transition the best that you could. And then it's also stepping into the reality that they are going to be okay. That you are now the one who is left here without them. And you have an opportunity now to begin to end the anticipatory grief phase and to start your grief journey. Remember, grief is a process. I hope this helps.